Hi guys, I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 11, Dead or Alive, or title taken from Negan's final line this episode, Dead or Alive, or some kind of in between, which I guess applies to Gabriel, who's now living in an existence where he sees everything through a booty hole. Definitely some in-between there. I'm going to run through this episode, point out all the parallels and connections you might have missed, and what this all means for these characters going forward. Let's start with a big question, something tweeted and commented by a lot of you guys. Why does Negan think his Walker Guts plan will work? This episode ended with Negan explaining to the Saviors his new strategy, cover their weapons with infected Walker blood and guts so that they only have to wound Rick's people and then let the infection take over. Now, the confusion with that is, on this show, we've seen characters wounded in ways that would almost certainly get them infected with Walker blood and survive no problem. Rick impaled his hand on one of Winslow's spikes in the landfill last season, though I don't know if his blood actually made contact with the Walker's flesh or fluids. The fluids, weird. Back in Season 2, Shane cut his hand with a knife that he had just been using to kill walkers. And in Season 4, Daryl casually held a bolt in his mouth after plugging it into a walker's head. Really, guys, if you go back and rewatch this entire show, no one is really being that sanitary when it comes to their open wounds around walkers. This isn't World War Z or 28 Days Later. No one's using Purell here. And Rick learned from the CDC that everyone, whether or not they get bitten, is infected with the virus, and that it will turn them whenever they die anyway. A bite just speeds up that process. So again, why does Negan see this as such a big game changer? Now, I would say Negan could just be less informed about the virus. He wasn't at the CDC after all. That was really privileged insider information that Rick got. But when Sasha killed herself in that casket and then jumped out at Negan, he was really more curious over how she killed herself than by the fact that she turned despite not getting bitten. Seems like he just kind of figured that out from experience. Really, Negan, I think, just sees this as a new form of warfare, inspired by Eugene's proposal to catapult Walker parts over the walls, something I think we all need to see at some point because that's awesome. Negan just wants to try a form of chemical warfare and psychological warfare. Rather than killing your enemy outright, you make them sick and cause a panic that destabilizes them from the inside out. That's the idea behind the various real-world nerve gases that were developed in the 20th century and why many of them were classified as inhumane in the Geneva Accords. Negan believes that merging their current danger, manpower and firepower, with that of the Walkers, germ power, is the key to bringing Rick to heel. And without spoiling anything coming up, yeah, this plan by Negan is taken directly from the comics, issue 122, so this is actually important to the narrative, guys. It's not just a random thing added to the show. But ultimately, I think getting that scientific confirmation from Dr. Jenner and the CDC early on instilled Rick and his crew with a sort of reckless, dirty bravery that might explain why they survived this long. But more on that later. For now, let's move on to some of the other ways this episode reminded us of past episodes in our segment Callbacks. And speaking of Negan's Walker gut plan, this final close-up of Lucille covered in Walker blood as he tells his men, "Look at that," parallels the moment in his infamous lineup with Rick's crew when he said, "Look at this, look at my dirty girl." For Negan, it's like he's returning to that feeling of pride when he could actually still shock and scare Rick into submission. Another connection I saw was the radio broadcaster Gabriel and Harlan stumbled upon. Harlan reads the script that the guy had. "For anyone who can hear my voice, know that you're not alone. Please hold on. We can make it through this. If we don't give up, if we keep believing, etc., etc." Remember, earlier in the series, Rick used to broadcast similar messages over emergency channels on the radio, hoping to connect with any other survivors out there. Even though Harlan dismisses it, Gabriel interprets repeatedly sending a positive message out into the airwaves and not expecting a response as an analogy for prayer. And he's embracing that optimism that Season 1 Rick still had. The reality that this radio broadcaster killed himself and the fact that this storyline really ended with Gabriel back in custody with Harlan dead is a really grim reminder of the bleak place this show has come to. It also makes you wonder why we even watched this multiple episode subplot. I guess the writers want us to think, with Sadiq now on the show, 2 doctors is just too many for the zombie apocalypse and Gabriel's foolish for believing in a higher power. Now, that said, I am very interested in Gabriel's booty hole blindness, and I have some more thoughts on that later. Another parallel was Henry, the creepy kingdom kid, staring down the savior POWs at the hilltop. After he killed Gavin, we talked about how that episode painted Henry as a parallel figure to Carl back in season 3 when he shot that Woodbury kid. Carl ended up taking the higher road in his life, but the fear now is that Henry is taking the dark path. This debate between Morgan and Carol is overseen by Maggie, who later learns that Carl died by helping a stranger. Her decision to show benevolence and mercy to the prisoners echoes the way her father, Herschel, reacted to Carl back in that moment. He saw that young, reckless inhumanity as a warning sign for all of their souls. And his daughter Maggie is both inspired by Carl's mercy and concerned with Henry's wrath, moving her to now share the rations with the prisoners. And if we're looking at past episodes, guys, we gotta talk about Tara this episode, and I'm sorry, Tara sucks. Her ongoing stubbornness and refusal to accept Dwight switching sides in this war, just completely hypocritical, considering, yeah, she did the same freaking thing. She fought for the governor. She stood right next to him when he chopped off Maggie's dad's head. Now, sure, she didn't fire on Rick or kill anyone the way Dwight did, but considering how grateful she was when Rick and Maggie let her stay with them, Tara should have some sympathy for a convert. Also, can we just say it's a little weird to see Tara mourn Denise for this long, considering they were only together for like 1 or 2 episodes. I think we saw them, one scene of them even talking, from what I remember. Look, I know we were all sad when Denise died, Tara, but it's time to move on. Rick's son just died 2 episodes ago, and Rick is already asking, who's Coral? Anyway, thank you, Daryl, for yelling in Tara's face here. Maybe throw a walker at her while you're at it. Okay, let's move on to a few cultural influences that showed up this episode and our segment Under the Influence. And first, Gabriel and Harlan's storyline. Notice what car they're driving. It's a green Jaguar. It's a little odd that in this zombie apocalypse, these fugitives are driving such a luxury car with a pretty good shine, no less, but maybe it's just because it's a reference. Another famous zombie story, Shaun of the Dead. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost take Bill Nighy's green Jaguar. Yeah, I guess we'll have to take the Jag. The Walking Dead crew has been known to make similar little nods to past zombie movies, so it wouldn't surprise me if this was an intentional Easter egg. There's also this piggy bank with the I Heart Ham radio on the side. You gotta love that pun. It ends up containing keys and a map, exactly what Gabriel and Harlan needed for their salvation. Gabriel points us out as an example of his faith leading to spiritual salvation, or salvation from within. This may be a stretch, but I see a parallel between these fugitives and the Shawshank Redemption. Andy Dufresne, who becomes a fugitive, hid his tool of salvation in plain sight inside his Bible, writing "Salvation lies within" as a lesson for the warden. Both Shawshank and The Walking Dead series were directed by Frank Darabont, so they're really spiritual ancestors at least. I also think there may be some deeper meaning to Gabriel's blindness. His illness causing him to lose his vision may be transforming Gabriel into the blind seer archetype of literature and mythology. The blind seer is a character who's literally blind, but possesses some divine powers that give them deeper insight or predictive abilities. Often these figures are men of faith, like Gabriel is. In Greek mythology and theatrical traditions, there was the character Tiresias, the blind soothsayer who possessed cryptic knowledge of the future. There are also various pop culture blind seers, like Daredevil in the Marvel Comics and his also blind sensei, Stick. And yeah, Gabriel must have been using some kind of super echolocation to be able to shoot that walker. No one should ever operate a firearm while looking through a booty hole. Anyway, I predict Gabriel's blindness will result in something greater than just a disability. But let's talk about the deeper meaning of this episode. Remember, its title is Alive or Dead, or some kind of in between from Negan's final line. Now, I mentioned before that ever since the CDC in season 1, Rick and his people have made every move with the knowledge that they're already infected. However they die, they're gonna turn into walkers no matter what. And I think that sort of death sentence has given them an edge in these years since. If you can lose each other at any moment, why not risk it all at every opportunity? That willingness to go all in is what separates them from the other groups of survivors that they encounter. So if Negan thinks he can scare Rick, Maggie, and the rest with this idea of being neither dead nor alive, but some kind of in between, he's definitely wrong. They've already felt like some kind of in between for the entire time that we've known them, and that hasn't scared them one bit. And let's move on to this week's kill count. After last week's record-shattering number of human casualties, we only saw one person die this episode, Dr. Carson, because the medical profession in The Walking Dead is apparently the equivalent of Defense Against the Dark Arts professor when it comes to turnover. So we'll measure the kill count this week in Walker takedowns, which makes Daryl the deadliest. By my count, he killed at least 4 walkers, probably more as they cleared that swamp. But a question for you guys, considering next week's previews make it seem like Simon is laying the seeds for some kind of mutiny. Do you think Simon would be a more effective leader of the Saviors than Negan? Comment down below and let me know your thoughts, or tweet me directly at Erik Voss and follow New Rockstars on Twitter for updates on our videos. And you can like this video and subscribe to New Rockstars for all of our deep, obsessive, psychotic analysis of The Walking Dead. And yeah, make sure to check out all my breakdowns of the past episodes this season for all the other stuff that you might have missed. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.